Hello everyone, welcome to the next in our series of episodes here about Disney Infinity to help new players to Disney Infinity who are coming out of the Star Wars fandom get a sense of what the game is, how it plays, and what all is involved in playing it so that they can make an informed decision about whether, as a Star Wars fan, they really do want to jump into Disney Infinity. I'm your host, Nathan P. Butler, and this time we're talking about compatibility. Now, for the most part, compatibility in Disney Infinity is limited to figuring out what physical items play with what. So first, let's talk about versions of the game. There was the original game 1.0. There's 2.0 where they introduced Marvel stuff. And now 3.0 is coming out where they're introducing Star Wars into the mix. The way this tends to work is that there are certain rules about what's compatible with what between the different levels, the different versions that are available. In general, for figures, right, like Captain America, a figure is going to be compatible in the game for its version and all the ones after it. It is forward compatible in toy box mode, right? The free-for-all mode where any characters can play, not the playsets where it's based on certain universes. We'll talk about those here momentarily. So, Captain America is from 2.0. He's compatible with 2.0's toy box and 3.0, and presumably eventually 4, 5, or 6, or whatever. But you couldn't take him because he's from 2.0 and play him in 1.0. He's just not there. He's not in that game, even if you own the figure. Whereas, by comparison, Elsa from Frozen is a toy box character from 1.0. So she can be played in 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and onward. All figures are forward compatible. All you need to know is what version they came out with, 1.0, 2.0, or 3.0. This does mean that the 3.0 characters for Star Wars that are coming out are only going to be usable in 3.0 to start with. They can't be used backwards in 2.0 or 1.0. So if you're thinking that you're going to play as Luke Skywalker somehow in 2.0, no. Or as Darth Vader in 1.0, no. Figures are forward compatible only, not backward. Speaking of forward compatible, so are power discs. Whether we're talking about ones for costumes, team-ups, terrain changes in the toy box, sky changes in the toy box, vehicles, whatever, power discs are also forward compatible. So any ones from 2.0 will work forward in 3.0. But nothing from 2 or 3 will work in 1. Nothing from 3 will work in 1 or 2. Forward compatible only. Now, some other notes about the figures. The figures aren't sold for any one particular platform. If you buy an Iron Man figure, Iron Man's going to work whether you're playing on Xbox 360, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 3, whatever. As long as it's Disney Infinity 2.0, you can play as Iron Man once you've bought that figure one time. When you put it on the platform, the Infinity base for the first time, it'll take ownership. And then as you move it between other games, perhaps, other copies of Disney Infinity, it'll have you either share ownership on that game or to play as a guest. Either way, allowing you to move between different versions of the game. However, that is not nearly as straightforward as it is initially made to sound by the Disney Infinity documentation. Okay? You can move a character on, let's take Elsa for example, from 1.0 into 2.0 into 3.0 and carry across the leveling up you've done with that character if it's on the same platform. So level up her on the Wii U, move to Wii U 2.0 to 3.0, no problem. She carries her levels with her. Or perhaps maybe I'm playing with Captain America. I level him up on my PlayStation 4, move him to 3.0 on PlayStation 4. He carries his stats with him, presumably. Or if I am someone who is playing at home on my PlayStation 4, and I go to a buddy's house who's also playing, which at my age is unlikely, but hey, I take him to a friend's place who's also playing on PlayStation 4, I can carry my stats with me when I play there on his system, presuming it's the same system that I started on, a PlayStation 4, even if it's not my PlayStation 4. You have a Disney account that links some of your stats, and these figures have a little chip or whatever that lets in hold stats as well. However, you cannot carry across your stats across platforms, whether you're going between different versions or the same version. I tested this out multiple times. So for instance, Black Suit Spider-Man. I leveled him up quite a bit on my PlayStation Vita copy of 2.0. Then I tried to carry him over and play with him on my PlayStation 4 copy of 2.0. And while I can still use the character, none of his stats carry over. Not as guest, not with share ownership chosen. The stats do not carry between Vita and PS4, even though they're the same company, Sony. They don't carry between the Wii U and the PlayStation 4, or the Wii U and the Vita. I've tried each of those. Other people that I know have tried moving between PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4, or Xbox 360 and Xbox One, and they're not carrying over within the same version of the game between different platforms. So let me suggest to you again, if you are someone who's been playing in the past, if you want to keep your stats on your characters, on your figures, continue playing on the same platform. Don't upgrade from PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4 unless you're willing to lose some stats on previously existing characters. I'm assuming that is how it's going to work, because that is how it seems to have worked between 1.0 and 2.0 if you're switching platforms, or if you just switch platforms within 2.0 and other versions of 2.0 out there on different systems. So physically they all work, but whether they carry their stats or not completely depends on if you're sticking with the same platform or not. Now, of course, the other big thing is, what about the play sets? What if I don't want to play in the toy box where it's a free-for-all? I want the stories. I want the Spider-Man story where he's fighting Green Goblin who's out there cloning symbiotes of Venom. Or I want to play as the Avengers and fight the Frost Giants, or whatever. Maybe I want to play in the prequel era of Star Wars or the classic era of Star Wars. That's the bad news, sort of. Okay? Again, playset pieces are like the figures and the power discs. It doesn't matter which system you're using them on. They are infinitely compatible across the different systems. You just have to make sure that you're using them with the right version. The problem with these is that the versions are very limited. A playset piece from 1.0 is only going to work with 1.0. A playset piece from 2.0 is only going to work with 2.0. A playset piece like Twilight of the Republic for Star Wars in 3.0 will only play with 3.0. Think of it this way. All the story content, all those animations and cutscenes and everything, that's what's on that game disc that you're buying. So it's only going to be on the disc for that iteration of the game. So if you want to play the Pirates of the Caribbean playset adventures, you got to do it on 1.0. Toy Story, got to do it on 1.0. Avengers, Spider-Man, Guardians of the Galaxy, got to do it on 2.0. The Star Wars ones, got to do it on 3.0. The same goes for the toy box game discs. All of the power discs, the costumes, the team-ups, the vehicles, all of those will work in a forward-compatible manner just like the figures, as I've mentioned. The toy box games that have specific story elements to a degree that are specific to a certain universe, they work like the playset pieces. They are only going to work in their version. So the Assault on Asgard from 2.0 only works in 2.0. The Escape from the Kiln from 2.0 only works in 2.0. Toy Box Takeover from 3.0 only works in 3.0. There weren't any of the Toy Box games for 1.0. So those playsets and Toy Box games, the ones that are specific scenarios, not a free-for-all, okay, those are limited specifically to their version of the game. Although you can use the actual pieces across different platforms. There's no difference between a Toy Box game disc for Assault on Asgard that you're using on the PS4 than on the Xbox 360 or the Wii U. It doesn't make a difference. But it's got to be a 2.0 copy of the game, the Marvel one. Now, I should also point out, before we leave the topic entirely of playset pieces, that, yeah, the 2.0 ones only work in 2.0, the 1.0 ones only work in 1.0, and 3.0 will only work with 3.0. Yeah, we get it. But if you go into the toy box mode of a later version and stick an older playset piece on the little hexagon pad, it does open up more stuff that you can use in the toy box. It does unlock more toys and stuff you can use for creation in the toy box. So you can't play Pirates of the Caribbean in 2.0, but stick this thing on the pad for 2.0. It's going to unlock Pirates of the Caribbean related stuff for the toy box that you can create things with. And by the same token, you can take your Avengers Tower piece for the Avengers playset, stick it on the pad in 3.0, and presumably in the toy box, get some more Marvel stuff to use to create alongside things like Star Wars items. So they're not totally useless. It's just you can't access the actual stories, missions, and universes that are attached to them. Those are limited to just the version they came out with. But toys unlock either way, which is nice. At least you're getting something out of your old, mostly unusable pieces when you move to a new edition. Now, obviously, the games themselves are designed for their specific systems. You're not going to take a game disc from the PlayStation 4, pop it in the Xbox One, and have it work. But that's just video games in general. What stands out as far as compatibility goes, also, though, is the Infinity base. Now, obviously, the portable ones are not going to be compatible with the console versions of the game because they don't have enough pads to be compatible. They're also not compatible with each other. The PlayStation Vita one charges up by USB and connects to the Vita via Bluetooth, whereas your 3DS one connects via IR, infrared, and actually uses regular batteries that you have to insert into the back. So both of those are exclusive to their platforms. The 3DS one only works with the 3DS. The Vita one only works with the Vita. But if you're going to be playing 3.0, that doesn't matter because 3.0 doesn't exist for either of those platforms. Now, the Infinity base, though, the regular one, that's another story. They all connect via USB. So you would figure that either they'll all be swappable for each other or none of them will be. Instead, it's somewhere in between. So here's the deal. An Infinity base from the Wii, Wii U, PlayStation 3, or PlayStation 4, all of those are interchangeable. I can use my PlayStation 4 base and plug it into my Wii U to play 1.0 on the Wii U if I want to. I could take a base from the PS3 and move it over to the PS4 or to the Wii. No problem, okay? So if we're talking about consoles, then the Japanese-based companies, Sony and Nintendo is the easiest way to think of it. PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Nintendo Wii, Nintendo Wii U, the bases are absolutely interchangeable. Whereas if you're thinking American, Microsoft, no, not even remotely. The Xbox 360 base will only work for Xbox 360. The Xbox One base will only work for Xbox One. Not only can they not swap out to Nintendo or Sony consoles, they can't swap out with each other. They're entirely exclusive. Somewhat of a monopoly on their own bases for their own system. Where have we heard monopoly in relation to Microsoft before? Anyway, yeah, econ teacher, not going to get into the difference between monopolistic competition and monopoly, but suffice to say, that's an easy rule of thumb. If you're playing on a Microsoft system, you will not be able to reuse your base if you jump to the other Microsoft system, only if you stay on the same Microsoft system. If you play on either Nintendo system or either Sony system, as far as consoles go, those are all interchangeable. No big deal. You can use one for the other, and it will work just as well. They are essentially identical pieces of hardware. So, if there is blanket advice I can give here, it would be if you are starting new with Disney Infinity 3.0 with Star Wars. That's great and all, but understand that you'll be able to have access to all of the previously existing characters, Disney Originals, Marvel and the like, Frozen characters, Pirates of the Caribbean, Avengers, whatever, in your toy box. You'll be able to use all the power discs from previous sets in your toy box. But you will not be able to use any of the toy box games from previously existing games. You won't be able to use any of the playsets from previously existing games. And you will only be able to carry over progress forward, not backward, and not between systems, even if they're from the same company. It must be the same platform. So if I'm playing on 3.0 and I'm playing on a PlayStation 4, and I know my kid's going to want to carry characters from PlayStation 4 to his buddy's PlayStation 3 copy of it, it's not going to carry those stats over. I might want to coordinate which system I pick it up for if there are friends that are going to be playing that we're going to be playing characters back and forth on each other's games. With that, we'll wrap up this episode on compatibility. Next up, what exactly is going to be available for Star Wars for 3.0? Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the Disney Infinity players.